Hello, this is Dr. Mike McKinney. I'm president of Promise Christian University, and each week it's a real delight and pleasure to welcome you to our program, Promise Christian Live TV. And each week we do our very best to bring you some very, very interesting guests that will be a real blessing and hopefully bring a challenge to your life. We want to thank you. Recently we had our 10th anniversary of our graduation at Promise Christian University. And we want to thank all of you in our audience today, and some of you that are very familiar with this program were praying for us that day, and we want to thank you and let you know that we had a very successful graduation, and we're giving all the glory to God, and we thank all of you for your prayers. Today on the program we have a very interesting guest and a good friend, Colonel Ernie Pearson from the Civil Air Patrol, U.S. Air Force Auxiliary. Colonel Pearson, it's a delight, sir, to have you on the program today.
Thank you, Mike.
I've been wanting to have you on for some time. I myself am a member of the Civil Air Patrol, and Adele and I have admired you so much because of your work. So could you tell us a little bit how you got involved with what the Civil Air Patrol is and how you got involved in it?
Well, as a kid, I liked to build model airplanes, and when I got old enough, I learned how to fly.
Very
and
good.
In conjunction with that, Civil Air Patrol was there, and I joined as a young fellow 56 years ago or so, something
Wow.
like that, and
Good.
I've been playing with it ever since.
My goodness. And so you actually started as a cadet with Civil Air Patrol.
That's correct, for a couple of years before I transitioned to the adult membership.
I see. So you've always had a love for airplanes and aeronautics and that sort of thing.
Oh yes, and that's one of the reasons later on I obtained all the aviation ratings there are practically, and
Right.
spent 6,210 hours teaching people to fly.
Oh my goodness, you're also an instructor as well as a pilot too.
That's correct.
Oh, that's wonderful. And I see that for many years you've been now as a senior member with the Civil Air Patrol, which is the auxiliary to the Air Force, isn't that right?
That is correct. We are challenged by the Air Force to perform certain duties that they are entitled by Congress to perform for us. Yes.
So the Civil Air Patrol actually is the official auxiliary to the U.S. Air Force.
That is correct, by an act of Congress way back when.
Wow.
And somewhere after World War II, I don't remember the exact date.
Mm-hmm.
But we also are a civilian organization, so we
Yes.
have the civilian side of Civil Air Patrol that differs from the Air Force side in what we're trying to accomplish in missions and
Right.
public things like that.
So one of the major things that Civil Air Patrol is involved in is the search and rescue. Is that in the small airplanes looking for downed craft or different kind of things?
That's absolutely correct, and I think we were known primarily for that activity, which had been going on for many years. It's slowed up now because part of it is the recession and people are not flying privately like they used to. It's coming back, and technology also moves on where we have devices, electronic devices that are superior to what they have been in the past,
Right.
but still that's one of our major requirements as the auxiliary of the Air Force.
And also they have the cadet program too. A lot of the young people are hoping to go to the Air Force Academy, things like that.
Yes, and that's one of the things that attracted me to CAP when I was a kid was, hey, I got my first airplane ride in a CAP airplane.
Wow, I didn't know that. That's great.
And that motivated me in later years when I was a flight instructor to train the cadets who wanted to be trained, and to train two of my children to fly.
Wonderful.
Because they were cadets.
Wow.
And just we took that from there.
Well, you've done very well with it, I'll tell you that. And also, I know you've held many different positions in the Civil Air Patrol, and we've known you as a commander or are the deputy commander of the Pacific region. Could you tell us a little bit about some of the jobs that you held in command?
Well, what you're talking about here is the organizational structure.
The structure, yes.
And most of my activity has been within the Pacific region,
Okay.
which extends from Hawaii up to Alaska.
My goodness.
And it's a big area, and it used to be really nice to be able to travel to all these different CAP meetings and
Oh, yeah.
activities in those areas.
Oh, beautiful, especially Hawaii, right?
Of course, yes.
I see. So actually, you've served a couple of times as the deputy commander of the region. Is that correct?
You're close.
Okay.
I was the actual region commander.
You were the actual region commander.
on 2 different occasions, about 10 years apart.
Wow. So that's quite a responsibility for any person, and I'm very glad that well, you've been gifted in that area, because those are very responsible positions, aren't they?
Yes, and it's a lot of good character building too.
Yes.
And seeing how people think differently about Civil Air Patrol, about flying, about aviation safety, about how to get along with people and things
Oh,
like
sure.
that. And to be able to be exposed to that kind of environment
Yes.
was quite a growing experience for me. It's always been just more and more growth and in understanding how to deal with tough situations,
Oh, yes.
be they organizational or personal, and come out hopefully with the right kind of answer and solution to the problem, or at least a direction to take to make it less difficult for whoever is involved in the situation.
Yes, and I understand as far as search and rescue that the Civil Air Patrol has been called on many occasions in this country when there are emergencies like earthquakes and things. Is that correct?
That's absolutely correct, because the type of airplanes that we fly are what the aviation industry calls light aircraft,
Yes.
mostly single engine aircraft who can take off from small fields and not and cover areas slowly and this sort of thing as you need for those kind of situations.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's very exciting. You know, you seem still very excited about this program itself.
Oh, it is exciting.
Yes.
Not only is it enjoyable and it makes you feel good, but you're accomplishing something.
Yes,
You're
that's right.
saving lives, and particularly like with our cadet program, the
yes.
younger people training, you're building lives. You give
That's
people
true.
give them character and training and leadership training for the future, which benefits them a great deal later on.
And I know today in our country, people are really looking for leadership, aren't they, Colonel? And here's Civil Air Patrol provides those kind of instruction. I think it's just marvelous.
Yes, and the word leadership, it's a very enticing word because it encompasses practically everything.
Yes.
And there's servant leaders, there's regular leaders, there's all sorts of type of leadership that work for certain situations that don't work in others, and we found that a lot in Civil Air Patrol too.
Oh, yes, that's right. And I know that in the emergency section again too, like if there's an earthquake, or the Civil Air Patrol will go or fly supplies in or do things of that nature.
Oh, absolutely, because we can get into the airports that bigger aircraft probably cannot.
That's true.
And so that's definitely a major part of what we have done over the years.
And then I understand that there are squadrons in many of the local airports all over the country, squadrons of the Civil Air Patrol.
Yeah, it's kind of a natural thing to have a fly at an airport when you're flying.
It's perfect, right?
It is. Now, not all units do have that opportunity to be at an airport, but they're usually close by.
Very close by.
Yes.
And it includes flight instruction and for the cadets and that sort of thing as well.
Well, it's not necessarily instruction unless
Okay.
they really want to. It's more orientation.
Orientation.
Because
yeah.
our job is not to train cadets.
Right.
But it's our job to give them the opportunity. To get into it, and we're able to do that. We've done that with both the power flying and glider flying.
I see.
We hold annual glider training programs throughout the country.
Yes.
During the summertime.
Wow.
And
So there's not only the cadets, but there's also the chaplain corps too.
oh, the chaplain corps is a significant part of what we do. Sometimes people wonder, well, you have airplanes, you have search and rescue, you have cadets. How does a chaplain corps fit in?
Right.
Well, it fits in very nicely.
Yes.
and is highly respected within the military
Yes.
chaplain corps also. I've had the pleasure of attending various workshops with the Air Force chaplains.
Oh, yes.
And it's great to hear what they have to say about us. We say that about them.
Oh, yes.
But it's good to hear.
Sort of a mutual admiration
Oh, there is
society.
no question about it.
And I understand, sir, that you also have the cross. You have become an honorary chaplain, too, with Civil Air Patrol.
Well, we don't have a formal title
I
on
know.
that, but there's one particular chaplain who tried to do that for me, yes.
Okay. I think I know who that is. A wonderful person,
Yeah,
too.
oh, yes. Yeah.
Well, I'm very glad for that today. And so if there's some young folks listening in, or the parents of young people, you might want to recommend the Civil Air Patrol to some of the folks viewing today.
Oh, no question. Oh, yes. Yeah, it's a great organization. You learn how to get along with in a different environment than you usually have, whether at home or at school. But it has aviation and electronics,
Yes.
and technology and leadership
Yes.
training.
Character development and all that.
Yeah. Again, the word leadership is a curious word because it encompasses too many things, but it's how to get along with other people, really.
That's very, very true. And in this day and age, we need to have those kind of understanding how to do that. And I know CAP does that very well. And I understand that many of the cadets have gone on to our various military academies too.
Oh yes, quite a few have, because it just gets into there, both male and female.
Oh yes.
But it gets into the so-called blood, and oh yes. Or if they don't do that, they still may become officers in the Air Force. Well, a while back, probably 3 or 4 months ago, there was a reunion of a group of people that used to be in CAP in the Pomona Valley.
Oh yes.
And they had a big get-together, which I was invited to, and found out that many of them had gone into the military and retired from the military.
My goodness, they made it a whole career.
Yes.
With the influence of being in the Civil Air Patrol.
That's control. And CAP has changed so much over the years, like everything has
yes,
as the years move on. But they have do that. Several career people in that group was there.
That's very interesting, and I know you've held some of the highest posts. Colonel, tell us, understand too that you're also have been an aerospace, or are an aerospace engineer. Could you tell us a little bit about your background in engineering and how that got started?
Well, I like to, I'm an amateur radio operator.
Oh,
have
I didn't
been
know that.
For a long time. And I just liked electronics, and so I thought I should study that, and did so, and went to work for Convair, it was at that time.
Oh yes.
And as a working, not a designer, but as an engineer, exec or helper, and kind of migrated into the sales world from that over a period of years.
I see.
I became a field engineer and lived in different parts of the country and around, and went to great other places. Over in the ocean and other places.
Goodness. That must have been interesting.
It was. Spent a lot of time in Hawaii.
Oh.
You know about Hawaii.
Oh, yes,
yeah.
yes.
And other areas where we had electronic equipment that was mostly tied in with the defense program.
So in other words, you would represent the company to, like, say, if you got some of the military contracts and things like that?
Yes, but at the level I was working, I was selling equipment.
Oh, the equipment part of it.
To certain types of equipment.
I
to
see.
the projects that we had contracts for.
My goodness! So you became an engineer in that field. How excited! You must have been very excited at that time. About it,
yes, it was absolutely delightful, because I was gone places I would never have gone before. And,
yes.
Yes, and seeing missile launches in the middle of the night, and landings of the missile in the lagoon down in a place called Kwajalein.
Oh, I've heard of that from World War II. They have a lot of trained a lot of people, didn't they?
Yeah, that was the headquarters of the Japanese fleet.
That's right.
Because the lagoon was 1,000 feet deep.
My goodness, I didn't realize that.
Yeah,
wow.
and it's the world's largest lagoon. 25 miles wide and 10 miles long and 25 miles wide.
My goodness.
And when we took the island in 42, I think it was, then it became the home of the American fleet.
Right.
So,
right.
But those are the kind of experiences I've had as a result of choosing this aerospace world
You got a chance to be in those places and participate in some very, very interesting projects and getting things, the equipment in and things done, supplies in. I think that's marvelous. And all that travel you must have done. I imagine it was such an exciting job that it must have widened your understanding of different people and places and things like that.
Yes, and the tolerance level too.
Yeah.
And particularly in dealing with foreign languages.
Oh, yes.
And during that time, I did try to speak in the language to some degree where I was. So I got a great experience to do that, but to also just say, hey, we are people and we have the same problems. Let's go ahead and solve them.
Wonderful. So how many years did you serve with that company to in that particular area of engineering?
Well, I was with 3 different major companies.
I see.
Over the period of
the whole career.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Yeah. Very interesting. Wow. That is great. And of course, I know you're a person of faith too, and I imagine faith has played a big role in your life on decision making, whether it's in Civil Air Patrol, whether it's been in aerospace engineering. I'm sure your faith has got you through a lot of things.
Well, it gives you what it does is, irrespective of what the faith is,
right.
Irrespective of it, you're reaching out to something beyond yourself, just like you do in engineering. Engineering is, there's something out there that you don't know.
Yes.
And yet you trust that you're going to find it. You're going to trust that it's going to be okay. And the theological aspect of it ties in very tightly, I think.
Oh, yes.
With that sort of environment and willingness to learn.
Right. I think that's marvelous because some of my Dell and I engineering friends that we have and are people of faith as well, and they say that it played a very important role, as you just mentioned, in their decision making and direction for projects and things that they were going to do.
And it builds tolerance too.
Builds tolerance.
Which is the toughest thing that we all have in how we get along with each other.
Yeah, how to assimilate into areas and things. That's very, very true. Well, I know we have a lot of people watching today, and perhaps some of the young adults are interested in engineering. Would you encourage them to look into that field if they really feel direction that way?
Oh, of course, absolutely, no question about it. Yes, absolutely. There's less thought about engineering these days because of some of the social programs and things, which we need also.
Oh, yeah.
But there's a variety, a plethora of what kind of engineer. You can be a civil engineer, electronics engineer, and radio engineer.
Radio engineer, yeah. All kinds.
Things like that.
Yes.
And it's a very exciting opportunity, again, to meet different kind of people and work with them. There's a lot of professions are that way too.
Oh, yes.
But since my experience is there, I like to sell the engineering aspect.
Well, that's what
or the sales part of it too. You know, that's
sure.
Yeah, I wasn't a great engineer, but I thought I was a great salesman.
I bet you were a great engineer too, sir. I have a feeling, and you've done a lot of things. And for those that are viewing today, as you see, Colonel Pearson has many ribbons. You don't get those from just sitting around. I'll tell you that. You have to really apply yourself. And I see a lot of awards and decorations there today. And I think you've had such a marvelous career all these years, and you're still a very vibrant person. And what are you involved in right now, currently? Because I know you've held many posts in Civil Air Patrol, many posts in engineering, but what would you say your current thing is right at this point?
Well, currently, we just finished a 3-year program called Organizational Excellence.
Okay.
The purpose of which is to have a program that will help people who are interested in leadership within the Civil Air Patrol to become better leaders.
Yes.
And how best to deal with the problems that Civil Air Patrol has, which are not that different from business
from
and
the
other
business
things.
world, sure.
But it's a fairly dedicated, difficult program.
Yes.
But it took 3 years for us to complete it, and we just finished that, and we're looking at some other things as far as the training aspect, how we can better train our folks.
Yeah.
And not overdo it or underdo it, but make it so that it's relevant to what they are doing in Civil Air Patrol and hopefully in the other world too.
Yes, one of the things that promise we've been asked, Colonel, is even some of our foreign travels is to bring from our university courses on leadership. And we're very excited about that prospect coming up.
Oh yes, it's a very important thing, and it's again, to repeat myself, it's a varied subject.
Yes.
It's just not leadership. There's all sorts of innuendos,
facets to it.
situations, which is
Right.
not easy to learn or to practice.
My goodness. So it looks like the Civil Air Patrol will have a very strong future, as glorious as its past, too.
Oh, I expected to see it grow.
Absolutely.
Yeah, oh, yes.
And I know they're all over the country, too, the different groups and different squadrons that we have represented and all over the nation.
Right. We have approximately 60,000 members. Not all are active, of course,
yeah.
but spread over the United States and sometimes in foreign countries. And it's just a good organization.
It really is.
And it presents many opportunities to practice sound type leadership
Yes.
within the problems that we occur.
Well, Dell and I have enjoyed doing the moral leadership, which we now call character development courses at our particular squadron, and we've been really blessed to share with the cadets some of the things we've learned in that area, and it's been wonderful.
Yeah, that particular program, the moral leadership program, which I still think of it in those terms.
Oh yes, me too.
It's excellent. Perhaps the students are not getting that at home, or if they are, it doesn't matter, but it still shows that the organization itself is cognizant
Right.
of the necessity or the importance of having that part of what they are learning for the
Right.
future.
And we've noticed there's a great interest when we've taught those courses. They're really listening. They're really aptly listening to what we're saying.
Yeah, well, the ones I sit into, they're very interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wonderful. Yes. Thanks. But anyway, oh my goodness. Well, today with your having such a wonderful career in both the Air Force Auxiliary, Civil Air Patrol, and the aerospace industry, and as a person of faith, what would you tell our audience? What should they, especially the younger folks today, should they be looking for for our country, that we can better raise, as you say, develop leaders for our nation? What should we be looking at today, would you say, in general?
Listening first to mom and dad.
Okay. Oh, very
Learning
good.
how to listen, because we hear lots of things out there, things that are said, things that are done, and we don't almost know how to react to it or to measure the effect it has on us or others for the present, or even sometimes for the future. So to be able to separate some of that mystery of life, the leadership training does assist you in doing that.
That's very true.
And that's getting into an area which we could talk about for a very long time.
Yes.
But the idea of just becoming a leader is not easy.
No, it's not.
Because there are a variety of leaders and a variety of ways to lead. Sometimes you lead one way, next time you do the same thing a different way.
That's true.
But to be able to be flexible enough and astute enough to determine when you change the leadership style, or when you do this and do that. And that's a very important thing for life.
Very good counsel, very good advice. So it begins at home. It should start at home.
Absolutely. And if it doesn't, then things like Civil Air Patrol and things does help it. But it's for success, it just needs to be there.
Well, obviously you've been a great success in your life, Colonel, and we can see and we know personally of many of your accomplishments. That's why we wanted you on the program so badly. And I'm glad you could be there with us today. We appreciate men like you in our nation, because you've helped to encourage not only the cadets, but you've encouraged us adults too, because Adele and I admire you personally.
And you folks encourage me too.
I'm glad.
You really do.
I'm glad, and I hope more of our viewers today, if they have young folks that are interested in flying and aviation, they might consider Civil Air Patrol and to look at that. If they're looking for a career in military, this would be a good way to start.
Well, there's no question, and we're on the internet. And
Right.
There's all sorts of information
Get
available.
the information
so it's easy to get.
Right. Well, we appreciate that so very much. Well, sir, I want to thank you for being on our program today. I just appreciate that so very, very much. And we hope to have you on again sometime.
Thank you, and you're welcome. It's most enjoyable.
Thank you very much. Well, as you can see today, we at Promise Christian University endeavored to bring you very interesting guests, as we had Colonel Pearson today. And I believe we've all been challenged, especially about leadership, as you mentioned, the various kinds of leadership and all the components and the things that are so necessary even in our nation today. And I'm praying that God will raise up more wonderful leaders with the right spirit, the right heart, and the right background. It's things that we've been taught by people like Colonel Pearson that have been an inspiration to all of us even here today, and I know we've been challenged. And if you're looking for a good Christian university or college, we'd like you to consider Promise Christian University here in the city of Pasadena. And you can check our website out later on for further information if you're interested. We have a program that goes from the bachelor's level clear to the doctoral level. And we just finished our anniversary of 10 years. This past August the 18th was our graduation. And we had a wonderful time at that graduation. We had the largest graduating class that we've had in the history of the school. And we're very honored and very thankful. We've had wonderful guests. Some came from as far away as the Philippines, Malaysia. Some came from some of the African nations, as well as across the United States. And we were just so thrilled that day to see the response of the people. And we have a wonderful team of marvelous instructors, professors. Some of them have graduated from some of the finest schools in America. So we're in very good hands at Promise Christian University. We're very honored to have these wonderful men and women to train and teach our students. So if you're in ministry or about to go in ministry, or you want a good Christian type education, which is a combination of the academic with the spiritual things of the Lord, then I would believe you need to look at Promise Christian University. So I want to thank you very much for tuning in today. We want to thank Colonel Pearson again as our special guest, and we appreciate all that you're doing. Thank you, and God bless you, and we'll see you next time. Probably was killed in